The last two games of opening weekend were not kind to the Toronto Blue Jays, so we'll break down this kind of debacle against the St. Louis Cardinals, as well as a Mitch White injury update on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and unfortunately, we're having to do this after another loss to the St. Louis Cardinals. Their lineup is loaded. They performed really well in the last two games of the series, and the Blue Jays just could not muster up any sort of a fight. I mean, they just were not in it against the St. Louis Cardinals over the past couple days. But we did see some okay things in today's game, and we're not going to press the panic button. It's game three. They were on the road to open up the year. They have a 10-game road trip to start the season, so it was a bit of a tough thing for the Blue Jays just to start. But I mean, this is not ideal after game three.
Yeah, and so much hype coming into the season. And just a quick reminder, as fun as baseball can be, there's going to be games like this. There's going to be series like this. So this is just the beginning of the long journey. So bear with it, bear with yourselves, and keep enjoying the fact that baseball is back. And also make sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the daily content, even through these rough games. But we're going to take a positive outlook on today's game along with the news updates. So that's going to be the main focus. But before we do get into the more positive side of things, we got to get into the first topic, which is Bassitt struggles and should we worry. And this is a topic that stems all the way back to spring training. And we've used this exact topic in videos in the past discussing spring training. His velocity has been down. He wasn't performing well in spring training at all. And looking at the lineup here, or the rotation here today, Chris Bassitt finished with 3.1 innings pitched, giving up 10 hits with 9 earned runs. And we'll quickly touch on the bullpen as well after this. But Peter, what did you see out of Chris Bassitt out there today? What I saw was a lot of non-competitive pitches, and the velocity is down, and it was a mess for him out there. He couldn't find anything.
Yeah, and we've touched on it pretty much all spring long. We touched on it in the pregame show. The stuff is just not there. It's not good enough for him to be missing pitches and not living on the corners. That's his calling card. That's why he's been in the league for so long. That's why he's been successful for so long. It's because he's able to be on those corners with all those different pitches that he possesses. But he did not do that today. He was hanging curveballs. He was, leaking sinkers over the middle of the plate, and it was just not something conducive to having a good outing for Chris Bassitt. He's got to be able to locate those pitches, and he couldn't do that today. And I told you, I've been on record saying that I'm worried about his stuff come playoff time. I don't think it's going to be an issue during the regular season. I think he just needs to iron some things out, but he's going to help the Jays get through the regular season just because he's an innings eater and he's a guy that you can rely on to be there every 5 days. That's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is come October when he's got to face these lineups like the St. Louis Cardinals, like the Houston Astros, like the New York Yankees. How is he going to be able to get outs if he's not locating his pitches and if the velocity is in the high 80s to low 90s? It's just not good enough.
Yeah, and his velocity is down. I think there was a tweet I looked at right before this recording. I wasn't able to grab it, but it's down, I think, 1.6 miles per hour so far throughout spring and this start compared to 2022. But yeah, like you said, and we got to get to October 1st, which I think, of course, we will. But he did not look very good today. He hasn't looked good in spring training, and he has 8 pitches. He throws a sinker, of course, 41% of the time, which is getting pummeled today. But if his 8 pitches, if none of them are really being located well and they're not being competitive, then it doesn't really matter how many pitches he throws. He won't be able to get through a ballgame. And he spoke out immediately after the game about his start. I'll pop that up for you right now. Blue Jays starter Chris Bassitt, this is around 2 minutes ago. He said, "I'm a little bit at a loss for words. I've never had a game like this where 6 different pitches were getting hit hard." He said the Cardinals were, quote, "way more aggressive than normal," and commended their lineup as well. Giving him a shout out to them. So, yeah, he got pummeled. And let's just be reminded that this Cardinals lineup is one of, if not the best lineup in the MLB. Everyone's happy we're done with them now for at least the time being, and the lineup is unbelievable, so I'm not writing off Chris Bassitt just yet, but like you said, there is some things to be concerned about. However, one quick bright side of the bullpen today, again, was the bullpen. Zach Pop, 2/3 of an inning, gave up 1 hit. Trevor Richards, 2 innings. He looked pretty good out there. He got himself into some trouble loading the bases, but his wipeout, unbelievable changeup got him out of it. He ate some innings today, and of course, Anthony Bass and Tim Meza did their thing. But the hitters weren't able to crawl back. But at the end of the day, Chris Bassitt was the one who lost us the game. But I'm not too worried going forward. However, it's a bit concerning, especially the lowered velocity there.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried about the regular season, and this has been a worry that we've brought up multiple times, and it's just about the playoffs. And I think the Jays are going to get there. There's no doubt in my mind that they're one of the better teams that the league has to offer. But what are they going to do once they get to October? Because they were one of the best teams last year, and we saw what happened against Seattle. So it's all about what you do in October and what you do when the games count most. And the Jays still have a lot of time to figure things out. We don't want to push the panic button quite yet. It's all about heading to Kansas City and getting on the right track over there.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know you're talking about playoffs. I'm more worried about tomorrow's game against the Kansas
Yeah.
City Royals, but I completely agree of that. Chris Bassitt in the playoffs, assuming we get there, is a bit of a worry, but in general, I'm not too worried about him just yet, though this was about as bad of a start you could have asked for, along with a horrific spring training. So something to definitely keep an eye out, especially because we already have two question marks in our starting rotation in Barrios and Kikuchi. So if all of them do well, then we're bound for great things, and if all of them do bad, then we might be in rough shape. But let's move on now to the hitters, which are Chapman and Varsho and Press, and specifically Varsho, of course, Chapman as well, but Varsho looked very, very good, very impressive against a left-handed hitter, and a lot of people were questioning why John Schneider put him in the cleanup spot, and he did his thing today, and he did his thing in the field, aside from that one weird center field sunlight catch that I'm not going to put too much blame on him for, as he made a phenomenal diving catch later on in the game. But you look at the hitters now, George Springer's off to a bit of a cold start after his first game there, 0 for his last 9. Bobachek got a hit late in the game. Vladdy, despite being 1 for 4, has hit the ball very, very well. He's seeing the ball well. He's getting a lot of hard hit outs, so I'm not worried there. Varsho went 2 for 4 with opposite field singles. Look, seeing the ball very, very well. And of course, Matt Chapman went 3 for 4 with a lace of a double. And I'm not too worried about the hitting. I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like the hitting approach is fine. I just think that this weekend specifically, the Cardinals were better. Our pitching was worse than the Cardinals, which is something I didn't really expect coming into it. But their lineup is unbelievable. But Varsho today, unbelievable game.
Matt Chapman is going to have a monster year this season for the Toronto Blue Jays, and we predicted it on our bold predictions that he would have 6 wins above replacement by the end of the year, and I think that's a real possibility. Obviously, he had that error in yesterday's game, so maybe that might hurt his defensive metrics come season's end, but I still think he's one of the better defenders in the league. He's hitting really well so far, and it's only 3 games, small sample size, but it seems as though his approach has changed. And he was on record saying he was very disappointed last year with how he was hitting. He was striking out way too much, wasn't putting the ball in play enough, and he actually set a record last year for most strikeouts by a Toronto Blue Jay. So I don't think he wants to replicate that same amount of production at the plate this year. He's looking to have a higher average and drive in more runs and be more of a valuable contributor up there for the Toronto Blue Jays. So I'm expecting him to be a monster. Daulton Varsho, I mean, what can be said? There was a lot of talk about him batting that high up in the lineup against the lefty, and he delivered. He looked pretty good, and I think that's the right move by John Schneider early on in the season. You want to see if he's able to handle these situations early on before you need to make those tough decisions later on in the season.
I agree, and get him comfortable. You spoke about that on the broadcast. Getting him comfortable in one spot, not moving around too much. So overall, a great game from him, both offensively and defensively. So that was great to see. But we'll move in now and let us know your comments on the thought on this game. And there's probably gonna be a lot of negative ones, but leave them nonetheless, and we'll discuss. And this one is a quick injury update. We'll touch on this before wrapping up the video here, and it's regarding Mitch White. And some unfortunate news is Mitch White was someone we could have used today to eat some innings. Unfortunately, we had to go to Trevor Richards. But as Mitch White lands on the 15-day injured list, and he was placed on the 15-day injured list on Thursday. White has dealt with both shoulder and elbow issues this spring. It's unclear when he might be available as an option, and he's out of minor league options. So I don't know. It's very unfortunate, and I don't know what your thoughts are on that. We haven't really touched it. Of course, he got placed on the injured list a few days ago, but we haven't had a time to really touch about it. He's not made much progress since Thursday, so are you worried about him not being able to come back anytime soon, or do you think he'll be okay?
I'm a little worried because he might be a guy that needs to eat some innings, not only in the bullpen, but in the starting rotation as well. Like I said, I'm not going to overreact after 3 games. I don't want to write Chris Bassitt off. I don't want to say Jose Barrios is going to have a bad season, or even Yusei Kikuchi for that matter. But if an injury does go down, is Zach Thompson better suited to fill in that rotation than Mitch White? Probably not, but you never know. You just never know the way that things work throughout a regular season, and I keep referring to it, the randomness of baseball. You could never count certain things out. So hopefully he makes a quick recovery and can contribute sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and hopefully we get some update on him because it hasn't looked great recently. And I wanted to touch on that today, specifically because we could have used him today. Very, very much so, just to eat some innings
You're
instead of
right.
using guys like Richards. But finally, to wrap up the video, a very quick look at the series ahead. And we have the projected players here versus the Royals probables, including a fun matchup Wednesday. So we have Barrios versus Singer, Kikuchi versus Bubic, Alec Manoah versus Zach Greinke, and Kevin Gausman versus Jordan Lyles. Peter, before we wrap up, what is your prediction for this series? What do you want to see? I think we need at least 3-1. We don't need anything at this point in the season, but 3-1 would be nice. And I'm looking for a sweep. They got swept today in their series, so they're not a very strong team, and we hopefully should have no problem clearing them out in 4 games.
I think 3-1 is something reasonable to expect. You don't necessarily need it, like you said, but you want to start playing good
Yep,
baseball right out of the chute because you don't want to have to rely on getting hot mid-season to make up ground on other teams. You want to be that team that other teams are trying to make up ground on. So that starts at the top. That starts from game one, and hopefully they can get things sorted on Monday.
I agree, and I'm excited for it. Of course, put this series in the back burner. Cardinals are a great team. Shout out to them, and
Hmm.
we'll move on to the Royals
We'll
now. Where
see them
hopefully,
later. We'll see them
yeah, we
later
will
down
see
the
them
road,
later,
hopefully.
and
Yeah.
hopefully that the Jays can come out firing tomorrow. But thank you guys for all the support. We'll have a pregame stream tomorrow and a postgame video. Support's been great, and see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks.